The first thing that we do is to approve the minutes. The minutes from last meeting, which are being written in terrific fashion by our new Senate Executive Coordinator, Chris Prosser. Here's the first part of 14 pages of minutes. I hope I don't have to ask you to read them now and that you look them over. Is there any changes that anybody would like to make? If not, I'd like to move to approving the minutes. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say nay. All abstain, please raise your hand. One abstention. Okay. With that, we move to the next part of the meeting, which is the State of the University. By the way, let me just talk a second or two about a little bit of function and processing here. We now have microphones that work in the room, as you can hear. The second thing that we have is that we're online, on the web, live, so please be aware of that when you make any comments. Okay? I put on a clean sweater, for example. And with that, and I see that Richard has just come, which is perfect, because the next thing on the agenda is a discussion, the State of the Union by our President, Richard Lariviere.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Nathan. And thank you all for giving me a few minutes here. Let me give you a brief update on where we are with the new partnership and the agreement with the governor that was announced with surprising endurance in the media. The governor has a new proposal, as you may know, for integrating education responsibility in the state. He calls it pre-K through 20. I'm not sure that's counting things in quite that way works very well. People have asked him to change it to preschool through graduate school, and I think that probably makes more sense. In any case, it does represent more than half of the state's budget, and it makes sense that there be some integrated approach to it. I've spoken with him on 3 or 4 occasions about his thinking on this, and I like it because it isn't a governance structure, it's a policy structure, what's in the best interest of the state. I like that approach, and what he has said to me about it makes a lot of sense, and I'm a big fan. Of course, the devil's always in the details and how things actually get implemented, but I'm quite optimistic that he's thinking in the right way about the approach to education in Oregon. He has also said very explicitly throughout the campaign, and since he's been elected, which is always the test, that he intends to do away with both the State Board of Education and the State Board of Higher Education and integrate the policy functions of those agencies into his Education Investment Board, that overarching board that he proposes. This matches very closely with what we have proposed with regard to the governance of the University of Oregon. Because if you eliminate the State Board of Higher Education and the State Board of Education, then you have preschool through 12th grade governed by local school boards. You have community colleges governed by community college boards, and you've got state universities with no governance. And our governance proposal matches exactly with what the governor's thinking is with regard to the governance of higher education. That is, it needs to be done in such a way as to allow the individual universities to flourish given their idiosyncratic structures, missions, et cetera, et cetera. So there's really close match between what the governor is thinking with regard to higher education and what the new partnership has proposed. The reason that we have opted to make our formal push for approval of the new partnership bills in the 2012 legislative session that begins in February is purely and simply inside baseball politics. It has nothing to do with the governor's enthusiasm or lack of enthusiasm, confidence or lack of confidence. It's about who, in a very small number of leadership positions, he can get to buy into both his proposal and our proposal simultaneously. And I don't want to mention individual personalities and so on, but there's a lot. I was going to say there's a lot more going. There's actually a lot less going on than meets the eye, because much of this is driven by, you didn't vote for my deal and I got stung, so I'm not going to vote for your deal. And it's not about the merits, it's about the inside baseball stuff. It's as a result of really extensive conversations with the governor and with his staff, we basically came to the conclusion separately that the best strategy to get done what we need to have done is to bring this up in February. It means a delay then of effectively 6 months or 8 months, something like that. And I can live with that if we get the kind of change that will enable us to flourish instead of continuing with where we have been in the past. So that's the news from Lake Wobegon with regard to the new partnership. As I said, the Governor's Education Investment Board, we really have to watch this very carefully and closely, and I want your help doing so. His proposals have been, at this stage, in the form of conversations, and we haven't seen the actual legislation yet, and that's where we'll have to really pay attention to what the consequences are. It's hard to overstate the importance of the engagement of this body and this community in evaluating these matters. Nobody ever proposes a piece of legislation that's perfect and everyone sits back and says, it covers all the bases, it's great. The process is one that improves things if it's done right, and it often is. And it particularly is in a community like this where you've got people of extensive experience and judgment at the table. And the conversations that we've had with the subcommittees on the budget, subcommittees on academic affairs, and in conversations with you, many of you individually, have really helped clarify what we need to say in this legislation. And it has resulted in substantial changes from time to time, sometimes more nuanced changes that result in better effects, likely effects, et cetera. So I'm going to ask you to keep engaged, stay engaged with this. This isn't something that we can just say, well, it will happen in February. In fact, we have to have our running shoes on the minute this session is over, because there's very likely to be an interim work group that will focus on these issues, and we've got to be ready with an articulation of what it is that we want in front of that group starting in July. So stay engaged, stay careful in your scrutiny, and let us know what you're thinking, because that will help us. It's also the case that we just recently gave testimony in front of the House Subcommittee on Higher Education. There were a variety of people there. I gave testimony. There were alums, there were trustees, and there were representatives of this body as well as of the faculty at large. And I think the committee was surprised at the fact that everybody in this community is paying attention to this. Because it's very easy for something like this, a set of proposals like this, to be identified with one person. It's that crazy president who's proposing these bizarre changes. And when John Chalmers and Ian McNeely spoke about the process that they had engaged in to evaluate this, and gave, without any ambiguity, their views on the proposal, I think it really brought them up short, because particularly the people who are opposed to this want to just make this a kind of personality issue, and that's why your engagement, your continued engagement, is really important. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about before we open to. Oh, I've just come back from the AAU meetings in Washington, the presidents of the AAU organizations. To say that it wasn't a uniformly happy gathering of university presidents would be an understatement. I think, however, that the fact that the University of Oregon has essentially gone through and survived all of the things that our colleagues in the public universities are going through right now puts us in an oddly strong position. And it didn't change my tendency to use this same metaphor. We've been living on bread and water for so long, we know how to build muscle mass on a diet like that. And our friends have been at, well, maybe not a feast table, but certainly a better, more rounded diet for years. And suddenly, all of a sudden, they are confronted with a bread and water diet, and they don't have a clue how to cope with it. Pennsylvania has had a proposal of a 53% cut in their higher education budget in 1 year. California has had a significant cut built into their budget, and that cut could double if they can't come up with a budget solution or resolution between the Democrats and the Republicans in California. And there's sort of diminishing enthusiasm for the likelihood that that will turn out well. So we've got a small reprieve of a few months again before our competitors get back on their feet and start raiding us and beating us in ways that we beat one another. But I came away from the AAU meetings overall depressed, but also with a sense that this is a rare moment for the University of Oregon. If we are able to carry off this new partnership, if we're able to generate private investment in the university in the way that I think we can, we could be in a very strong position for the future. Anyway, those are the things that I wanted to report on. Anyone have any questions or anything? I'd be happy to entertain them. Yes?
Sent you 4 questions yesterday, and would look forward to an opportunity to talk about those. I think the town hall meeting that we had in January was certainly in the correct spirit for that kind of discussion. However, as it turned out, many of the questions came from students and community members, and I don't think faculty had enough opportunity there to engage on this.
The shy retiring faculty didn't assert themselves in that
environment. Well, I think I at least believed that I had other fora in which to do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, and Gordon, I think that's really important, and I mean, I'm happy to do it whenever schedules can be arranged, because the more engagement this body has, the better for everybody. There's no hidden agendas here. There's nothing that we're trying to get away with. We're trying, in fact, the uncomfortable thing, frankly, about this is that we're simply trying to get everybody to recognize where we really are and what the consequences of policies have been. And kvetching isn't the answer. What are we going to do about it? That's the real question. And that's both what's been in both, I think, a source of encouragement and optimism and unpleasantness in the public arena, particularly the legislative arena. But I welcome the opportunity to engage those questions.
Anybody else? If not, let me thank President Lariviere. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as you've heard, and as you got an email yesterday, and for those of you who are not senators, you did not get this email, we are not going to be discussing this motion today. The reason is that the sponsors of that motion, the Senate Executive Committee, has chosen to withdraw this motion. And I think it's important for you to know why, because there's nothing being done hidden. And those of you who are on the Senate Exec, please chime in if I leave out something or I misspeak. There is a general feeling that there are still some unanswered questions about the new partnership. There are still some concerns. And the fact that the landscape is changing, that this whole situation with the state, with our governor and with the legislature regarding education and higher ed, and this fusion that President Lariviere spoke about, plus the fact that we don't really know what the new partnership is going to look like in the next year. All of these reasons led to the Senate Executive Committee feeling a little uncomfortable about bringing a proposal or motion to endorse the new partnership when we really don't know what we're endorsing. Do I have that pretty much okay with the Senate Exec? Did I leave out anything? So, after about a week of conversation, the Senate Exec unanimously voted to withdraw the motion. I think that the idea is that the motion will come back to the Senate, but it will come back when there's more clarity about the details of the new partnership. Okay? So, are there any questions about that? While we're on the subject of the new partnership, Gordon's questions, which he has put out here, and you're welcome to take, and there are other people's questions, I think they're very relevant to this whole idea of the new partnership, and the President has said that he's very open to having conversation about this. I'm going to ask yet again for any questions that there are about the new partnership to be sent to me, and I'm going to request that the Senate Budget Committee, which has reviewed the new partnership in detail, try and address all of the questions that are being asked. And then we will post the answers to these questions on the website. So you will, and we will actually develop some website or some page so that you can actually go to this page and get the answers to whatever questions have been proposed. Marie's hand is first, so.
Some of the questions that are going to be posed or have already been posed are not financial in nature. So I don't think it's proper to limit the questions to the purview of the Senate Budget Committee.
That's a good point. And I think if the Senate Budget Committee, which actually is not just focused on budgetary matters, but on various implications of those matters and the effects that it has on the university, if the Senate Budget Committee feels that it can't answer the question, or if we don't like the answer that they've given because it's thin, then we'll come up with some other answers. So I'm just giving it to the Senate Budget Committee first so that they can work through it. If I'm a little uncomfortable about setting up a whole new ad hoc committee that has to learn about the new proposal, the new partnership, unless we start getting a ton of questions, in which case we will set up a new committee. That was Marie Vituli, math.
Ian McNeely, Academic Council Chair. Nathan, if you think it would be appropriate, I'd be happy to take this up with the Academic Council as well. As you know, we've written a report on the new partnership. Our purview is anything that concerns the academic values of the university, and I think that my colleagues on the Academic Council would be willing to answer those questions as well.
Done. Okay? So between the two committees, we should be able to get some answers. Okay? Thank you very much, Ian, for offering that. With that, we are now going to move to the motion that we actually, or the set of motions that we actually are going to be discussing. today. This is a set of 3 motions proposed by the Undergraduate Council, and they all have to do with improving grade culture at the university. And I think I'm going to ask Ian McNeely to come up and give us some sort of introduction, and then he can sort of tell us how we want to proceed, what we're going to do, and how he would like to proceed. What we're going to do, because these are 3 independent proposals, we're going to work our way through each one of them separately, and we're going to vote on each one separately. Okay? So, Ian?
Great. Yeah, Ian McNeely, Undergraduate Council Chair. These motions are about 5 years in the making, so I won't go through the same speech that I've given on a couple other occasions and that prior Undergraduate Council chairs have given to this body and to other bodies in the past. I just want to reiterate a couple points. Number one is that we are not out here to slay the dragon of grade inflation. We're not out here to reverse grade inflation. We're not here to knock down students' grades. Our motions are not predicated on any particular findings about the causes of grade inflation, at least not in a rigorous statistical sense. Instead, they take grade inflation and a host of related problems like grade compression, grade grubbing, it's all in our report, as symptoms of a deeper problem, and that's the loss of meaning surrounding grades. And so all these motions are designed to start conversations about grades, to share information about grades, to make faculty more mindful about how they assign grades, and to make students and transcript users more able to rely upon the grades that they've been given. That's why we're calling these grade culture motions, even though grade inflation and a fairly rigorous report by Mark Thoma several years ago in the economics department took up the issue of actual grade inflation. That conversation has morphed now into grade culture. And we've tried to craft these in a way that respect and promote the values of academic freedom. They're all designed, each is designed independently to fill a specific informational vacuum, to provide information. Together, I think they will provide information to students, faculty, and transcript users. Procedurally, we're going to vote on them separately because they do have different and separate rationales. So I'll begin with motion 11A, which you can read here, and maybe I'll just try without reiterating or rereading every paragraph, every sentence in the paragraph to explain what we're up to. Basically, disciplines are the units of knowledge in the research university, and each discipline has legitimate reasons for grading differently. When we post, as we do now, a policy that simply says A equals excellent, B equals good, C equals satisfactory, etc., we don't give students the tools to understand that that's the way that the research university, the modern university, is in fact organized. So we're asking people in this motion, specifically we're asking each department and undergraduate program in this motion to formulate a rationale for its grading practices and post this publicly on its official website. Our idea is not to put individual faculty members in a straitjacket. If you look closely at the motion, you'll find that there's nothing in this that is compulsory, that requires anyone to adhere in a rigorous way to these rationales. In talking to people, I think they would find it very useful simply to know what counts as excellence in history or in chemistry or in architecture, for example. We would like departments to devote specific attention to A+ grades in their posted rationales. It's our findings that the assignment of A+ grades accounts for a large part of what is perceived to be grade inflation, and that these grades need to be specifically articulated by individual departments. Departments should also discuss the degree to which grade inflation threatens to compromise their evaluation practices, and if appropriate, develop discipline-specific ways to address this problem. I know that both the economics department and the Spanish department, to take two very different departments, each with their own disciplinary standards, have already begun to have these types of discussions on their own. The role of the Undergraduate Council will be to make these rationales easily accessible online. That's a trivial thing for us to do, and encourage conversations among different departments and programs as they formulate these rationales. Lots of units, lots of department heads have asked me, well, what are you expecting here? We can begin with Spanish and econ and fold in others as we go, and departments can learn from each other and learn how to explain to each other and to the broader university community what their grading practices are. There is no direct financial impact. The motion merely requires a set of discussions about grades whose outcomes will be posted online. So that's my introduction of 11A.
So now this is the point in the meeting where we have a discussion about this. If anybody wants to raise a comment, any issues, this is the motion doesn't have to be moved because it's got a it's from the Undergraduate Council. The committee has to move it. So does the committee move this motion?
The Undergraduate Council moves for the approval of motion 11A.
Thank you so much. And thank you. So now the motion is moved. And just for parliamentary sake, we've moved the motion, but it doesn't need a second because it's a committee rather than an individual making the motion. Okay? So now that we've worked through that, it's now open for conversation. Is there anybody that would like to speak pro or con to this? There's a lot of implications to this, and I would hope that people ask and say what they think before we end up going to a vote. Tell us who you are.
Marilyn Nippold, CDS Program, College of Education. I'm just a little concerned about this. I think that this idea in principle is fine, but it also assumes that there would be agreement within a department as to what constitutes an A+ or an A, and I wonder if you could actually achieve that and really what that would mean. I think you'd have a genuine freedom to disagree, and you may not all the faculty may not agree within a particular department about that. I think it might be difficult to achieve agreement there.
Yeah, and I think that's a judgment call each unit will have to make. I think they should be asked to do so in whatever terms can command the most assent from all the members of their unit, knowing full well that anyone can opt out for principled pedagogical reasons.
Any other questions, comments?
When you say, Brian Powell, student representative, when you say discipline, does that mean like the College of Arts and Sciences or a specific major or maybe even a subgroup within a major category?
Every individual department and undergraduate program, whether it's in CAS or not.
Okay.
A lot of departments harbor within them several different subject codes, several different disciplines, different teaching styles within a given discipline, language and literature, for example, even within, say, French. In those cases, it's, I think, helpful for students simply to know what those differences are, that those classes may be graded according to different standards, and the website offers an opportunity to simply make that point clear.
Anybody else? I happen to have a comment, but it's not from me. It is from a professor who could not come today, and that professor has asked me to read their statement, so I'm going to do that now. This is from John Nichols, professor of history. Okay. On the proposal regarding grade inflation, I am in class during the meeting of the UO Senate, so cannot be present for the discussion. I would like to urge the UO Senate to table the motions for reconsideration at a later date. I write this letter as someone who has served on all curricular committees over the years and chaired most of them. Moreover, I am not adverse to making changes and propose similar motion on general education requirement several years ago. I recognize, as we all do, that there's a problem with grade inflation, and I welcome the work done by the Undergraduate Council to reflect on the nature of the problem and to suggest some methods for dealing with the trend. Nonetheless, there are compelling reasons for moving slowly. Grading is an intensely personal issue, and the grading culture varies significantly by program and department, and by school and college. I suspect that many here would agree that the problem is best regulated at the local level. So my first question is, has enough been done in departments and programs to monitor the trend and to establish guidelines for faculty? Has enough been done to alter student expectations about grades? I know that some, like Karen Sprague, have worked to change expectations, but I believe the issues have not yet been addressed in most departments. And if departments have failed to address the problem, we need to know why. The top-down approach offered here strikes me as premature, given that little has been done at the departmental level to alter expectation of faculty and students. 2, I am very skeptical of adding notations to the transcript that inform about the number of, for example, A's awarded in a class. If I were a student who had worked hard for a grade, I would find it very troubling to see such a remark that 88% of the other students in the class also received an A. Such notation would serve to promote bottom fishing, and that cannot be construed as an improvement. Moreover, to claim that the cost of reprogramming the transcript and adding the information to DARS does not strike me as cost neutral, or even as something that can be implemented in the near future. That is, even if approved, the changes will take considerable time and effort to implement. My informants in the registrar's office indicate a significant degree of skepticism on this component. This proposal needs serious budget estimate of the real cost. Hence my conclusion. I recommend that the motion be tabled and reconsidered only after the Undergraduate Council has provided departments, programs, and colleges with suggestions to manage the problem, and taken up again only when it's been proven impossible to manage the situation locally. This is from John Nichols, Professor of History.
John Nichols is a colleague of mine in the history department. It's funny, this is the first I've heard of this. We see each other in the hallway all the time. I would say these motions, again, have been 5 years in the making. This 11A is specifically designed to provide a framework to manage the problem locally. I have brought it to my own department, and we had discussions about it. I can't remember if he was at that meeting or not, but I did so at the initiative of the Undergraduate Council. This provides a framework for all departments to have these discussions and to adopt whatever policies they see fit to address it. On the issue of the transcripts, I'll defer that to 11C because that's where it comes up. On the last point, my informant in the registrar's office is the registrar herself, who assures me and has assured me repeatedly that this is cost neutral. She gets to determine the programming priorities within her own budget of the staff that she already has. And she has said, and I've asked her because I've gotten this a couple of times, will this be cost neutral? And she says yes. So in other words, I would resist tabling the motion.
Robert finally sent this to me about a minute ago. Let me just read to you what Robert wrote. Okay? Now, this is a statement from Robert Keir, President-elect of the Senate. First, my apologies for my absence from today's Senate meeting. As chair of the composition department in the School of Music and Dance, I was asked to give a master class at the Hult Center for the Eugene, which offers the Laura Avery Master Class program. John Harbison, a renowned American composer who is the composer in residence for the Eugene Symphony, fell ill and could not travel to Eugene from Boston. Consequently, I was asked to give a master class in his place, since I had prepared all of the student composers and performers who are participating in this event, and that's happening now. That's why he can't be here, and he apologizes. I'm asking me, Nathan, to read the statement on my behalf in order to request that a motion be made to table the 3 motions related to improving grade culture. Although I realize that grade inflation is an important issue, I do not believe that the motions as proposed will achieve the desired result of improving grade culture, and I do not believe that they will be without financial impact on the university. Therefore, I propose the 3 motions be tabled until the following is achieved by the Undergraduate Council, at which time a reconsideration of the motions may be more appropriate. Offering direct suggestions and participating in open dialogue. First, I propose that the Undergraduate Council work directly with departments, colleges, programs, and the academic units in order to suggest concrete ways to improve grade culture as appropriate for specific disciplines. One size does not fit all, and it's important for the Council to interact at the local level with departments in order to understand their needs, and to suggest ways that our grade culture can be improved within the context of specific disciplines. My first point relates directly to the charge of the Undergraduate Council, which states that it is authorized to do the following: participate on behalf of the university faculty in the planning the development and improvement of the undergraduate instructional program of the institution, in consultation with the university president, officers of administration, and with relevant department heads and program directors. Please note that the Undergraduate Council is not given a charge to administer or implement general policies, but it is asked to participate in the development and improvement of undergraduate education with relevant department heads and program directors. Preparation of a specific budget for implementation. Second, I propose that the Council work in conjunction with the appropriate offices to prepare a specific report regarding the costs of enacting the motions, if it still wishes to pursue them. In regard to paying for administrative time alone, it is not possible that the changes to transcripts are cost neutral. A sufficient amount of work will be done to effect the proposed changes, and we must be apprised of the exact costs before these motions are considered. The changes that are being proposed will require an enormous amount of work to enact and are not the results of a simple button press, as was stated at our last Senate meeting. Personally, I want to see specific line item budget before I will feel ready to vote on any of these motions. Alteration of transcripts. Finally, any addition or alteration of transcripts must not put our students at a disadvantage on a regional or national basis as they apply to pursue their studies at the master's or doctoral levels. It is my belief that the proposed alteration to transcripts will present our students in a bad light that will not improve their chances for acceptance at the graduate institutions in the nation. We will be creating an unequal playing field in which our own students will be ill-served and placed at a disadvantage in a highly competitive environment. Thank you for considering my appeal to table the 3 grade culture motions in light of the issues I have raised. Robert Keir. Now. Oh, would you? Absolutely.
This is not news to me. Robert Keir mentioned this at the last meeting. I sent him a 2-page email in which I parsed the charge of the Undergraduate Council, and I believe this is within our ambit. He did not respond to me, despite numerous attempts on my part to get him to do so. On his first point, however, this is very well taken. Again, working locally, developing solutions appropriate for specific disciplines, resisting a one-size-fits-all approach is precisely what Motion 11A already does, and was crafted with that specific philosophy in mind. So I don't understand that objection. On the point about our charge, we would have no administrative power whatsoever as far as this goes. It would be the Senate which would be designating the registrar to make the changes. And as I said, she assures me that this is in fact cost neutral. I'm not in a position to question her. I trust her professional judgment. On the issue of the charge, I noted to him that points 1, 3, 5, and 6 of that charge do give us specific powers to do things like monitor and respond to the general academic policies of the university. Point 5, to establish criteria and outcomes to determine the success of the overall undergraduate program. It's our belief that grades ought to be criteria by which to evaluate the success of the overall undergraduate program, that rising grades ought to mean enhanced success, and we can't rely on those anymore. Number 6 requires us to monitor the academic coherence, quality, and standards of the undergraduate academic program to assure that the quality and rigor of instruction and evaluation are consistent across the curriculum. So point 6 of our charge specifically requires us to look at evaluation practices. That's what we're doing. Again, we have no ability to overrule or even interfere with the rationales for grading policies that would be posted on the websites. And I specifically would reject that even if that power were offered to the Undergraduate Council, because I think it's inappropriate. This is about starting conversations and developing local solutions.
Zachary, Stark-MacMillian, student senator representative. To me, it seems like having the Undergraduate Council suggest specific changes for each department seems like more top-down and intrusive than just asking them to come up with their own metrics for evaluation. And I think as a student that would be helpful for me. I've been in classes where where the grading wasn't clear on what was important, what was prioritized, and how what was required of the papers and what they were looking for in the papers. And so I think that a clear just a simple metric put out by the department that would say that would be a great help. And I don't think that that is intruding. And it doesn't seem like that would be intruding too much. It's just this is the part A and B seem like it is just a way to start conversations between departments. C is a little bit different, but we're not talking about C yet. So I think especially A is just asking for conversations and not intrusive.
Hi, Leah Middlebrook, Comparative Literature and Romance Languages. Zach really just took the words out of my mouth, but I'll just second them very quickly. I mean, I really want to thank the Undergraduate Council for the wording. I think these items are represented in the spirit of education and information and transparency, and I think that that will be very helpful to students and to faculty. And with great respect for every voice being heard, I mean, I think that the personal nature of grading is in fact slightly problematic. So to encourage departments to discuss more uniform standards, and then again to have this, language in here that also keeps it from being binding to individual instructors, really shows the benefits of 5 years of considering a plan. So thank you for that. And then just speaking on behalf of two departments that are so horribly beleaguered in terms of our own administration. Thank you to the council for agreeing to, give us this language and then not meet with us, because adding another set of meetings would really be taxing. And I think you've done the work for us and given us a lot of freedom. So thanks.
Hello, I'm Tom Wheeler from journalism, and in the interest of full disclosure, I'm a member of the council. I support the motions. I just wanted to give you a little background on the behind-the-scenes discussions, and I wanted to say that we very much appreciate the thoughtful and detailed memos that were sent by our colleagues who couldn't be here today. I certainly cannot speak for them, but I would agree with the point in the first one that not enough has been done on the local or department level, and in fact that is very much the impetus behind 11A, which we're now discussing. I would take exception with respect to the characterization of the top-down aspect. I can tell you that at no time in the discussions was there any pretense that the criteria that the dance department would come up with would be the same as that derived for chemistry or journalism. The whole idea here was to keep it at the local or departmental or school level, to have their own discussions, to get the conversation started. There were some comments that seemed in the memos to refer exclusively to 11C, so we'll table that for now since I think we're just discussing 11A. Clearly not a top-down, in my view, a top-down thing at all, but simply to get the conversation started where it can do the most good, and that's at the departmental level.
Any other comments?
Melanie Williams, Romance Languages. I also support this motion. In our department, we have teaching faculty as well as a lot of graduate students teaching, so I think especially for this diverse group of teachers, something like this could be useful. I'm a little worried, however, that by the end of fall 2011 might be a bit ambitious as a timeline. That's my one concern.
I don't think we're wedded to that date. We would like to get the process going. So if someone wants to suggest a change, it's not the end of the world.
Are there any other comments? Well, with that, I think it's time to vote. So, unless anybody has anything else to say, we will be voting on this, which is just 11A. Okay? So, all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say nay. Abstained? My ear tells me that it's passed. Is there anybody that would like to see a hand count? In that case, we've passed 11A. We now move on to 11B. 11B is this one, which is the comparative statistics one, essentially. Ian, do you want to make a brief run through on this one, please?
Yeah, in fact, we have a change, a friendly amendment to offer. What we did, by the way, is to send this to the Academic Council, all three motions to be independently vetted. And since I'm the chair of the Academic Council, I recuse myself from those deliberations, and Professor Sadowski in the math department put together the final report. He came up with revised language for 11B, which I actually think is better. And I'd like to just go ahead and swap this one out. We were trying to be a little too clever with this one. I think his is more straightforward. We can discuss them both, but I'd prefer just to present his version. And I believe there's a link if you go down. There's a link to the Academic Council report, and on the second page, there's the full motion with edits. It's the last link on the list.
There are so many things open on my computer. Okay.
Incidentally, the Academic Council endorsed all three motions.
This is the changes, right?
This is the change right here, motion 11B. This is animated by the desire to give faculty members the ability to understand how their grading practices compared to other faculty members. Grading is an intensely personal thing. Grading is something that is lodged in individual disciplines. The grades are at the same time a language, however crude, that we're all forced to speak. And we felt it would be helpful for faculty members to know how their distributions of grades for a given course compare to other grades being offered by their colleagues in whatever set of other relevant courses they find most useful to them. So can we go with this version? Okay, great. So comparative statistics available to instructors. The University Senate will make comparative statistics available to instructors starting in fall 2011. Each time you teach an undergraduate course, the registrar will show you a standard set of statistics giving grade distributions for relevant courses at any moment, probably September 15th for fall term, that the statistics can be generated by a computer. It was felt that we should not report those in terms of just a mean and z score distribution, but to show you something like a bar graph. So the example here would be, for example, my course, History 105. You would be able to log on to DuckWeb as you began to teach History 105 and see past distributions of A, B, C's, D's, etc. for History 105, for 100 level classes in history, for all classes in history, for all classes in the College of Arts and Sciences. There would be a standard set of comparative statistics that would be available to you and to you alone as the instructor of that course. Then, at the end of the time when you when you teach your course, and right before you submit final grades on DuckWeb, you will be shown the mean grade and grade distribution for that particular course. This was founded on a specific calculation, a pessimistic one, about how deeply faculty members can be expected to engage with grading. The one moment we know every single faculty member has to think about grades is when they're obligated to submit them. At that moment, we felt we could trust faculty members not to go back and hastily change grades, having seen their distribution. We would show them the distribution. They would be able to say, looks good. They would be able to use that to check any errors. We did not feel that they would look at their distribution and think, oh my God, I need to go back and grade those finals again. Very few faculty members would have the time to do that or would be inclined to do that for any other reason. There was a lot of concern about who would have access to these statistics. There were suggestions made by the Academic Council, among others, that we publicize this widely, at least among the faculty, if not the general public. We heard a lot of concern that these statistics could be used against people who were perceived to grade too leniently or too harshly. So we decided on what amounts to a compromise solution, folding in these statistics into the official course record, roughly equivalent to the class list shown on DuckWeb, and those statistics would be accessible to people with those course lists. By and large, that's limited to the faculty members who teach the courses themselves, though others, such as department heads, if they wish, can go in and find that information in some cases. We will work with the registrar to serve these statistics. As I've said, she has volunteered her computing resources. She has a lot of insight into what is the proper way to format something when it's offered on DuckWeb. And we've talked a lot about the privacy concerns and which metrics are the proper ones to use for comparative purposes. And that collaboration has already been a fruitful one.
So we have to move this motion to the floor. Okay?
I so move.
Thank you. Now, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable here, okay? Because as I read this, this is the entire motion, right, Ian? And more than half has changed, okay? And this is the first time you're seeing it. Now, normally, what we would do when there's a change in a motion is that we would go through an amendment for the change, okay? And we would vote on that. This, however, is a big change, maybe not in specifics, but at least in the wording, because it's been changed. And so I think it's important for us to at least vote on this amendment, to accept this amended change so that you can vote on this as amended, or that you need more time to think about it. Now, I do want to mention that the Undergraduate Council has spent a lot of time, many years, developing this, and I don't want to put this back any further, but I also feel a responsibility to the Senate not to, this is the first time I've seen this, so, I mean, I feel a responsibility to the Senate not to have something foisted upon them at the last moment, okay? Even though this is probably essentially the same as the previous one with some minor tweaks.
The substantive difference is that it would make statistics available before a class begins. Right. The previous version, which I'm happy to revert to if it would speed things along, makes statistics available only after grades have been submitted.
So, what I'd like to do is to ask the Senate to vote on the amended version so we can bring it to the floor for conversation. If you think that you're being forced to vote on something that you don't want to vote on today because you've just seen it for the first time, I would urge you to vote no. If you feel comfortable with it, I would urge you to vote yes. But now I think it's important for us to go through this quick procedure. Okay? So all in favor of accepting this as a substitution to the motion that you have previously seen, please say aye. All opposed, please say nay. Abstained? Several abstentions. Okay, so this passes, and therefore we will now be discussing this and voting on it. Okay, so with that, we can now move on to the conversation on this motion.
I want a better, Marie Vituli, mathematics, Senator. I want to make sure I understand what you mean by the statistics and being part of the record. So will the distribution, the percentage of A's, B's, C's, etc. for that particular course, over what time frame will that be part of the record? Will only instructors teaching that course have access to that information, and department heads and deans and so forth? Mm-hmm. I want to better understand what you're proposing.
Let me distinguish between the individual CRN's statistics and the comparative statistics. For an individual CRN, the only things that will be bundled with that class list is the distribution of grades for that particular class. It's exactly what if you went manually down the class list and tabulated the number of A's, B's, and C's, you would come up with. Separately, elsewhere on DuckWeb, you would be able to pull up the comparative statistics, the standard set of comparative statistics we would design in collaboration with the registrar to give people access to various comparators, all history classes, all CAS classes, etc. The first set would only be accessible to those who can already access the class list for a given CRN, a specific instance of a specific course by a specific instructor for that course. The comparative statistics would be available to others, to everyone, in fact, who would be for whom their individual course, say History 105, would be linked to. That's not a good explanation.
Over what time period?
Over that we would design in collaboration with the registrar. We've had various suggestions running from 2 to 3 to 5 years. It has to do with where the data are accessible, but it's a technical problem. We would be open to guidance from the Senate if you have particular desiderata.
Hi, Reza Rajai from Computer Science. I think providing information to faculty is a great idea. My question is more related to the basic goal we are trying to achieve here. And there is something that is puzzling to me, and I think you probably have a clear answer to it. Just want to get that out. So you're providing this information to me as a faculty so I know how out of norm I am given those groups. Or how different is my grading compared to, I'm just trying to see what we're trying to achieve. If on the one hand I see that my distribution is, say, different from previous years I've taught this, all the instructors who have taught this class, all the 100 level courses, and all those groups that you're talking about. So I'm seeing that difference presumably because I'm supposed to react to it by fixing something if I realize there is something to be fixed. But then you just said, we assume faculties are not going to react to it, they just grade it, so there is no reason to change. So I'm just trying to reconcile these two notions and see what is really the goal because we're trying to achieve, simply because I think people unconsciously may adjust their behavior. And I'm not saying it's a good thing or bad thing, that's a different discussion, but and that doesn't mean regrading, that just means adjusting your brackets for A or B and C, just a little bit of tweaking those. And I'm not sure that's a good thing, by the way, to adjust those.
The remark about reacting referred just to that moment before you submit on DuckWeb. We do hope people will react at other moments, at more leisurely moments, when they're beginning to design their courses, or after they go back and look at their course evaluations, which is another time when people often think about, next time I do this, how am I going to do it differently? There is no implied norm or standard that the presentation of these statistics involves. You can look at them and decide how to act on them however you want. You can decide not to act on them at all. You can say, this looks good based on what others do. This looks different based on what others do. I'm going to still do it my way. Or you can say, as I did, wow, I give a lot of Bs relative to my colleagues. Next time I design the syllabus, I might consider tweaking the assignments in order to spread that out. Is that a good thing? Yes.
The fact that after 2 years or 3 years, the number of percentage of Bs that I'm giving end up being aligned with the average in my department. Is that a good thing? That's what I'm wondering, because I'm not quite sure if that is a good thing.
There's no way to say whether the number of Bs will be aligned with those in your department. Depends on individual instructors' behavior, and it depends on their collective behavior. We're simply giving them the information to decide how and whether to act on that.
I wanted to respond to that. I'm agreeing with the comments. This is Marilyn Nippold and CDS. I just want to say why I'm going to vote no on this. And the way I view this is, sure, you can say that you have the option to change your grades or not change your grades, but to me it looks like a modern form of peer pressure using technology to pressure people. If you see that you're outside of the mean, you're going to think, just like you said, well, gee, I'm giving too many Bs or too many Cs, and I'm not sure that that's a bad thing. And I think it's an idea that, especially you see the feedback before you actually finally submit your grades. To me, the message is clear. You're trying to promote people's conformity. Here's the mean. You're out of line. And I disagree with it because I think you're promoting too much conformity, too much control over how people are grading.
Did you want?
Glenn Waddell, Economics. I'm going to try and keep this brief. I have a couple of concerns with this. One, it's actually interesting to me in this 11B motion that we start with these small groups where we're going to actually, be updated on our last time at bat and what we graded this class like last time. Because if you actually get to that level of detail, on average, we should find that we graded it the very same way. There is no grade inflation for the same class over time. The inflation that we're seeing is very much in aggregate as students select across different classes with different grading standards or levels. The average grade does tend to rise. But I should find, and I would predict that most would find, because I've looked at the data, if you just look at the same class over time, pretty much you did the same thing last time you were at bat. So I'm not sure what we learned by this, and share some of the concerns about how people might respond to the information. My second to last point to make on this is that now that we've passed Motion 11A, I wonder if this is actually jumping the gun a little bit. I can only presume that by passing 11A, we're anticipating some discussion on issues such as this, that we might well learn something through the discussion that's going to be happening around campus. We might have departments actually come up with good ideas. It seems like maybe what we want to do is slow up a little bit and allow some of those ideas to percolate. I can imagine certain departments coming up with ways to deal with their particular issues that look very much like this. And if they were to, it'd be nice to offer that to the department, but not to sort of impose it on all departments. Econ has been used as an example repeatedly. One of the other things that I don't think has been shared here that's a practice that I can add to it is that we get an email with every term that passes that doesn't just inform us about how we have graded, but every single class in the econ department that term, I learned something about the percentage of A's and B's. That's something that's been happening in our department for many years. So again, it would be nice if we could actually have Motion A kind of live its intended purpose and see where it goes.
We want to give all departments access to the types of statistics that I understand you already get in econ. And we think these statistics will inform those departmental conversations.
Lydia Vandriel, Music. I have a question about relevance of this as well. Most of the CRN courses I teach have enrollment of 1. Sometimes it's 2 or 3. And I just don't understand how those statistics would be meaningful to me in evaluating my courses. I'm open to an explanation of that.
They probably wouldn't. And in those cases, you could choose simply, I would expect you would ignore them.
Okay, Deborah Healy, American English Institute Linguistics. I like the idea of seeing the information ahead of time at the beginning of term, sort of as an FYI. I see little point in seeing your own statistics just before you press that send button. I think it sends the wrong message. The more information we have to be prepared in our classes is better. But there is this implied, oh, gee, I fit or I didn't fit this mythical average. And whether or not we really want to is another question. My other issue is with who are the relevant courses. And I would also agree with the number of students in the course being an issue here. I like the idea of, since we've passed 11A, thinking some more about where we are with 11B.
If the first part you mentioned is a stumbling block for most people, I would at least hope that we could provide those comparative statistics at the beginning. It's very simple to do. It doesn't require a lot of programming. We had provided in the original language the precise list of comparative, not the precise, but the courses with the same name, same number, same subject code, same department, and or the same college. If we could get those statistics available at the beginning of every term, that would go a long way to providing the information we want to provide.
Brian Powell, student representative. One thing that concerns me about 11B is I'm not sure it's accomplishing what the goal is for it to accomplish as far as grade inflation is concerned. Because if grade inflation is about a mean that's going too high, this seems like something that's trying to push people toward a mean. And I think it may make your problem even worse, especially not just grade inflation, but grade compression, which seems to be really the root of the issue that you've been dealing with from my understanding of it. And so it seems sort of counterintuitive to try and push people toward a mean. And even if the goal of this isn't necessarily to push people toward a mean, it seems like that's what the end game would be. Thank you.
You're right. It's not the goal. It's not the goal to push people toward a mean. It's not the goal to reverse grade inflation. And I can't state that often enough, because it's an understandable misconception.
Yeah, I had a question. Zachary, Stark-MacMillian, student representative. So will instructors, will they have to look at the distribution of their colleagues or the history of the class, or would that just be an option?
It would be an option. You would be able to access it on DuckWeb very easily, but it wouldn't be something you'd be forced to look at. Only the individual, as currently written, only the individual distribution for your particular course is something you'd have to check off on before you submit grades.
So
again,
it's just
change that.
So it's just providing more information to professors about the greater distribution. It's not saying here's everyone's distribution and here's yours.
Right. You could choose to ignore it entirely, not even let it enter your life.
Yeah. So I mean, if people have a problem with seeing their own grade distribution, I think that we could just change that to be also optional to look at. And as long as they don't have to look at everyone else's grade distribution, then people can ignore it, or it's just a way to provide more information. And I don't think there's ever anything wrong with more information.
Yeah, and if that's the stumbling block for people, I think we can live with that.
Any other comments? I'd like to move on and bring this to a vote. So we're voting on B. We've had a good conversation about it, so we're just going to work through the vote. So all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say nay. Abstained? I can't tell, so I'm going to have to ask for a hand vote. And Chris, I'm going to need your help to double check. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. All opposed, please raise your hand. Abstained? 1 abstention, 2 abstentions. Okay, I have 9, 13, and 2. 10, 13, yeah. 10. Okay, 10, 13, and 2, which means that the 13 was the opposed. So this motion is not passed. We move to the last motion, which is motion 11C. Is there a change in motion 11C? Or can we go back to 11C? Okay. Here's 11C, and this is the contextual information one on transcripts. And you want to make this quick? Oh, can we move this, please?
I so move.
Thank you. Now, can you give us a brief?
The idea here is to reformat transcripts so that next to each grade, with some exceptions I'll go into, you'd also see the percentage of A grades, A range grades, given for that course. The exceptions would be for courses with fewer than 20 enrolled, in which you cannot expect anything like a normal distribution, and any course for which the release of this information may violate federal law, specifically the FERPA law. It would go into effect only in fall 2013 to give the other policies, or in this case, the other policy 11A, a chance to take effect.
Good. So, comments on this? Discussion?
Model economics. I'm going to keep this one shorter, actually. The issues with this one, actually, it was just raised with respect to 11B, where more information can't be harmful, but in fact, it can be. And in this particular case, I'm a little cautious about how we introduce this information. And one issue I have, I guess, is with the lack of empirical evidence of what, in fact, we would expect to see in response to this information. The literature is growing. We're learning more, but right now the evidence is, in fact, mixed. I dug up, I'm just going to read a couple of sentences from the abstract of a current working paper that came out of Cornell Economics Department looking at this very issue. The Cornell's done this in the past. The main aims of such grade and context policies are to make grades more informative, to transcript readers, and to curb grade inflation. We provide a simple model to demonstrate that such policies can have complex effects on patterns of enrollment and student ability distributions. These effects may in turn lower the informativeness of some transcripts, increase the average grade, and lower LFAR. So with that out there as a theoretical possibility, with growing evidence that in fact there's there looks like this effect out there in the literature. I'm hesitant to push this through, even though our priors might be to think that this is in fact good policy. I think that's to be debated.
I'm just interested in Harinder Khalsa, Romance Languages, interested in hearing what Robert Keir had mentioned about this motion. He had concerns about our graduates being judged based on this type of a transcript.
If you remember Robert's statement, and I won't read it again, but Robert was worried about the impact of this motion selectively on our graduates, given the fact that other people who are applying to schools, graduate schools, are not going to have this kind of contextual information on their transcripts. That was, I think, the summary of his concern. Are there any other comments?
Yeah, our basic thought is that transcript users already make these judgments subconsciously, in many cases based on prejudice. I've made this type of judgment myself many times in evaluating transcripts for Phi Beta Kappa. So you make assumptions about the difficulty of a particular course like organic chemistry. And if you see an A in that course, you assume that must have been very hard to get. Again, we're not dictating how the information should be used. We're providing one encapsulated statistic to enable people to correct their prejudices where appropriate. And there are a few other universities that have begun to move in this direction. It's not that we're a complete outlier in that respect.
Brian Powell, student representative. I've said this before here, and my biggest concern is that the only students I really see this helping are people who are already getting A's in tough courses. It seems to me like if someone gets an A in a course where it may even be a tough course, but for some reason there are more people A's in that course, it discounts their A. If people are getting B's in courses where even maybe only 10% of the class gets an A, you don't say what the B means. No one knows what the B means. It's an incomplete context. And it also seems to me that the students who are getting A's in these tough courses are probably the people who need the help on the transcript the least. And it seems to be putting the students that are maybe not at the most excellent end of the spectrum at a greater disadvantage than they already are when competing with those other students for jobs and graduate school placement.
Mike Price, Mathematics. I had sort of a similar question, basically. I was wondering if you could speak to what made you decide only to have the A range specifications on there. I mean, this is just the math guy in me, but I can envision, a little icon that gives the miniature distribution with like a colored in bar for whichever grade that person got. I'm just thinking just in terms of, any rate. So I'm curious, why A's only?
The short answer is the amount of real estate available in the transcript.
Right.
So among the many admittedly imperfect metrics we could choose, and this goes to the other question, we chose that one. There's not much space in the transcript. The specific problem identified by Mark Thoma's grade inflation study was that the percentage of A's is going up. So that's where the grade compression exists. This provides a means to put that in context for any individual course.
Any other comments? With that, we are going to move to a vote. This is what we're voting on. So all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say nay. Abstained, please raise your hand. There are one abstention. I heard a strong nay vote, so I don't think I'm going to ask for hands. So this is also not passed. Even though we didn't pass 2 of the 3 motions, I think there is a real sentiment that this is an important issue and that we, first of all, need to thank the Undergraduate Council for spending years on this. Okay? And I do want to send a message to the Undergraduate Council and all the members, not only thanking them, but my feeling from hearing this discussion is not that there is a sentiment against doing this. There's a sentiment against doing this now until we see what's happening with A. And so please tell the Undergraduate Council that I guess we're saying we're tabling this. We're not saying this is not a good idea. It's just let's see how things develop, and please come back to us and work with us and be with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we move to the open discussion part of our meeting. That is the part where we, sooner or later, come to a discussion on campus governance, shared governance. And I'd like the Student Senate President, Stark-MacMillian, to come up and help chair this with me. We're going to spend a little bit of time this afternoon talking about shared governance. Shared governance is an important part of, an essential part of this university. And I asked all of you to send me a few comments about, a few words about what shared governance was. I got words like faculty voice is the most important. I've got words like commitment and focus and listening. I didn't get very many other words, though. I got a few other ones. But the reality is that shared governance is the basis for our university's way of life. And so what I want to ask to begin this conversation, and I want Zach to chime in from a student point of view anytime he'd like, is to ask three questions. The first question is, what do we have now? The second question is, what's missing? And the third question is, how do we get to where we want to go? So I want to ask you as senators to tell me, and we have the president and the provost here, so please tell everybody, and we're on live, what your thoughts are about what we currently have at this university. Do you feel comfortable with what we have? Do you feel a little uncomfortable? What's the good and the bad parts of our shared governance system? Forget about the shared part. Okay. Does anybody want to begin the conversation? Frank? Tell us who you are.
Stahl Biology. The charter of this university says the faculty shall govern the university, defines the faculty as the professors and the president. That philosophy is well embodied in our Constitution, which was drawn up by a faculty committee and approved by the president. I'm unaware of what shared governance means. We have a faculty who's supposed to govern and an administration whose responsibility is to carry out the policies established by that faculty. I don't think we're there.
Is there anybody else who would like to voice an opinion in public? We all voice these opinions in private. Okay, so you might as well come out with it. Come on. It's not, I mean, what do we need to do to make things better? I will tell you, nope, you can't say anything. Nope, you had your bit. Sorry. No, it'll come back. It'll come back. We'll come back. But we got to have some other voices here besides you and me.
Ian McNeely, Academic Council Chair, Undergraduate Council Chair. I don't think historically that most universities have been governed by faculties for, depending on how you count it, 100 to 300 years. I think that governing boards appropriately, administrations appropriately, have a lot of the administrative power, and that model has worked well in this country for at least a century. I think that faculties and senates need to focus on academic matters. I'm grateful that we've been able to do so today in the context of the grade culture motions. I'm not in any way miffed at the outcome. I think this is what we need to be doing, and leave administrative matters to administrators and board matters to boards.
Just as a point of clarification, just and a little bit of history, For 5 years, I was president of something called the Coalition for Intercollegiate Athletics, which is a group of faculty senates around the country. And as a result of that experience, I learned a lot about other faculty senates across the country. What I learned is that University of Oregon is unique, and it's unique essentially in two ways. One is that we have a charter, as Frank said, which officially and unequivocally states what the governance position is of the faculty and the president. Very few, if any, other universities have that. The second thing that makes us distinctive, if not unique, I can't be sure it's unique, but it's certainly distinctive, is the fact that we have a university senate that is not a faculty senate. It is a senate of all the stakeholder groups on this campus, ranging from faculty to officers of administration to classified staff and students. And by the way, next year we will have also a member from the officers of research as well. So as of next year, we will have essentially every constituency, including non-tenure track instructional faculty, on the Senate. So we have a slightly different governance system than other universities. I just wanted to make that clear. That's something that I think we should all be proud of. Don't all speak up at once. I feel like I'm in a lecture hall here and giving a really boring lecture. Okay?
If I can, I'm going to chime in. From the student side of shared governance, I don't know how many of you know how the ASUO and the student government is structured, but where you have your charter, we have what's called the Clark document that was signed by Robert D. Clark that gives students some authority over the incidental fee and really is the heart of the student autonomy and student power on campus. And throughout the years, we have students on on almost all of the faculty committees for different topics, 5 students on the University Senate. And so I think that we are in a fairly good position, especially compared to other schools, like Nathan said, but there's always room for improvement. If we're talking about what can be improved, one group that I think is missing from the University Senate is GTFs. Technically, they could be on from the Student Senate, but we only have 2 graduate student representations, and I think that is a constituency group that doesn't usually actually make it through. They have to go like 2 different levels to make it to the University Senate, so having some GTF representation directly could add another voice.
I can tell you in private conversations that I've had with many people, including people in this room, who feel that our system needs improving. And generally, what I hear, I'll give you an example. Today, I sent you out an email the other day asking, begging you to find people to run for the Senate because we hadn't had enough, and many of you responded positively. Somebody who will remain nameless called me today and said they would like to run for the Senate. They've been here for 4 months, and this person wanted to know, why should they run for the Senate? I mean, the person asked me a very specific question. Does the Senate have any power? This person, like I said, has been here for 4 months, and this person said, I've been here for 4 months, and my understanding is that the president has all the power. And I said, well, that's true and not true. I said that we have a system where the Senate actually can pass legislation. We focus on things like curriculum and student conduct and some policies, and what happens here essentially is mandated into law unless the president chooses to veto it. But on other issues, we are advisory, and that then is taken up in conversations with the administration, and sometimes that advice is taken and sometimes it's not. For many of us, sometimes it feels like the advice is not taken frequently enough. That's what I told her, and that's the gist of what I hear from many people, a concern about the fact that our voices are not heard enough on a wide range of issues, ranging, for example, from promotion and tenure policies to police with guns, to faculty salaries and salaries of other people, on and on and on. And so for me, it's a continuous struggle to try and get people to think that we have an impact when sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. So that's an issue that I hear repeatedly. The lack of listening.
Thank you. Carla McNeely, representing classified staff. And as one of the first original 3 classified staff that were invited to join the Senate, I'd like to speak as one who's serving currently. Our constituency has taken this position in the University Senate and shared governance very seriously. Even most recently, we've met with our constituency about the new partnership. We went to as many meetings that we could and to learn and educate ourselves about what was happening, because we take what's happening on this campus as a shared stakeholder very seriously. There's nearly 1,500 of us. And so that, to me, and speaking for my constituency of classified staff, having a voice, having a vote, being able to be a participant in the entire shared governance system on campus has been an amazing experience for me. We meet regularly, as we have since I've been a senator many times and served several terms. We have taken this responsibility very seriously.
And I will tell you that the classified staff voice here is not only much appreciated, but it's been invaluable. And I, for one, appreciate it greatly.
Peter Keys, Architecture. As someone who's been involved in a lot of governance things for about a decade here, I think when we talk about what needs to be improved, I think one of the problems and why people don't want to be more involved is that they do a calculation of what's in my own interest. And I think, we have a discussion of where academia is going and where it has gone in the past few decades. My feeling is, I've been here about 20 years, and I've seen a change in 20 years where people are less engaged, less committed to the university, more a sense of, well, I'm here now, and as long as I'm here until a better deal comes along. I think it's a two-way street, that people don't feel that they have a strong loyalty to the place, that they should put a lot of effort into making the place a better institution, because that will take time away from their research, which is what gets them promotions and raises and better job offers from places with more money. So it's a calculating thing. And I think in that way, the other thing that reinforces that is they don't see how a benefit will come to them from participating in this. Clearly, if they're going up for promotion or something, the time they spend on service, everyone knows it is discounted compared to doing research or publishing papers. So I'm not saying that this is a good thing, and I'm not saying it's a rational thing or an irrational thing, but it simply is out there what's in the culture. And I say look at the faculty I know who retired now from here and the level of dedication and involvement they had with governance on this campus 20 years ago, with what I see particularly with younger faculty here who have been raised in a more cynical, more market-driven time, and say, this doesn't make any sense for me to do. I'm going to focus on what's good for me.
I think Peter's point is well taken, but I'd like to expand the conversation, not just of participation in the Senate, but the whole global nature of our governance system here on this campus. Peter's right, but let's not just talk about just how do we get more people to be on the Senate, but how do we get the Senate to be more integral to the lives of people on this campus. The general rule, of course, is that 5% of the people do 95% of the work on these sorts of things, because nobody's getting a promotion on the basis of what they do in this room. So I want people to think about how we can make the Senate a stronger institution and how we can get people to respect the Senate more than they do.
Okay, this is Harinder Khalsa from Romance Languages. I have a personal statement and a question and a suggestion. The personal statement is about something that I don't understand, actually. The UOVO has a mission, which is kind of difficult to find. You have to go through several etheric loops to get to it. But if all of us here are working towards that mission, I don't understand why there's a need for shared governance. Why don't we all do this together, you know? Faculty, officers of administration. I mean, I understand the practical divisions about these things, but these are goals that we should all be working towards. That's my personal statement. The second one, I would like to actually hear from both the president and the U of O Senate president about this very question, what is working and what is not working. And then the suggestion is, well, thinking about this new partnership proposal, since it's something that involves every constituency in the you know, at the university, why don't we all work on this together? You know, find committees from each constituency to work with the administration. Because lots of questions came from the faculty. They were maybe heard, maybe not heard, maybe answered, maybe not answered, but I think that there should be a unified way of looking at this, because it's something that involves everyone who's working at this institution, including our children who will be going to this institution, perhaps, and all the students, you know, who will be coming here. It's not about us, really. The change that we're making is going to make a big impact on future generations. Thank you.
Well, Richard, we were both asked to answer this. Do you want to take first crack at it? Do you want to take second crack at it? Okay. Being the bashful guy that I am, I will. What's not working was your question, right? And is not. I think what is working is that in the previous administration, I felt nothing was working. Nothing. And in the current administration, I think we've improved because of the attitude and the atmosphere of our president that he's generated. That's big in my book. It's the only reason I ran for Senate president, because we had a new president who I believed in. What's not working? I don't think we've made enough forward progress in our governance system and in taking the faculty voice and the student voice and the classified staff voice and all the other voices on this campus and really listening to them. I feel many times that lip service is paid to that and still continues to be paid. And I think decisions are not made in conjunction with our governance system. I think decisions are made outside our governance system, and that's a source of frustration for me and I think for many other people. And I think there are good reasons for sometimes that happening, because democracy is messy and slow, but I think there's a cost to doing that, and that cost is a cost of perhaps an attitude of disrespect to the system, not to individuals. And we're here. The other thing I think that's important is that we talk a lot about this, but we really don't talk about the impact that it has on our students. And I'm here for my students. I'm not here to be Senate president. I'm here because I have a commitment to the job that I do. And I think we spend a lot less time talking about that and a lot of time sort of talking about other peripheral issues. And oftentimes in many cases, I view the disagreements that we have as discussing the disagreements rather than the areas of common interest and working towards those areas of common interest. And that's what I think we can do better.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Nathan, for running for Senate president, because I was the president of the university. That's one of the nicest things anybody's ever said to me. You know, I've been at a few universities in my career, and the issues around shared governance are shared among institutions. One of the points of enormous frustration for everybody, and I think that's true for you as well as it is for those people who are watching what we do here, is the slowness. And for me, one of the perfect examples of this is the Pacifica Forum issue that we were all extremely exercised about a year ago. And I was very exercised about it personally as well, and felt an obligation as particularly a new university president to do something. And we put a lot of pressure on the Provost's office and a group of faculty and staff and administrators to come up with a solution. They basically dropped everything in their lives and came up with a pretty elegant solution. Within, 2 weeks? 6 weeks, okay. Seemed like 2 weeks, 6 weeks. In order to effect that solution, it was necessary for it to be approved by the Senate. Has it been yet? Ah, okay. And when was it approved by the Senate? The last meeting? Okay. Well, that sort of reinforces my point. It may be that given the nature of democracy that one must inevitably have those kinds of delays between the need for a solution, the identification of a solution, and the implementation of a solution. But I do think that that kind of sclerotic phenomenon contributes to people's reluctance to make the decisions that Professor Keyes was talking about. Do I invest my time in this, or do I invest my time in the long list of other demands on us? I'm not saying that that's a flaw of this particular mode of governance. I've seen it elsewhere, and it may simply be part of the nature of things. But I do think that that contributes to a sense that that this may not be the venue for action, rather a venue for something else. I don't know what else. I'm encouraged by the engagement of this issue of grading today. Not that I have a particular stake in any of the outcomes of A, B, or C, but I was struck by the fact that this has been something that this committee has been engaged in for several years. 5 years was the number that I heard earlier, and one of the objections was that it was maybe too soon to implement something. I'm not going to comment on the rightness or the wrongness of that view. I don't have a view, but that doesn't go to doesn't reinforce the notion that this is a body focused on the expeditious implementation of changes necessary in a very dynamic institution. As I said, that may simply be the nature of democratic representation, and there may not be anything to be done about it, but it is something that I get thrown back at me a lot from a number of our constituents, including faculty and staff, about the functioning of the Senate.
I'd like to respond, and I'll make it brief.
It's not necessary. I didn't put it out there for a response. It was simply an observation. But please feel free, since it's your show.
I'd like to respond. The Senate has, the comment that you made, I think, has, can be summarized by saying that the Senate moves too slowly. On both the issues you raised as examples, the Senate has moved very quickly. On the facilities use policy that was brought to the Senate, we voted on it within a month of seeing it. On this policy that we've talked about, it's the Undergraduate Council that's worked on it for 5 years. We have talked about it for two meetings. I personally think that this body acts very quickly and thoughtfully on very precise and important issues. And to denigrate this body by saying that it is slow and therefore we should come up with another system, or maybe we're not really good for doing what we're supposed to be doing, I think undermines our entire system of governance. And I don't think that's right. Our system of governance has been designed for a set of intelligent people who have to deal with important problems. And I think we do a damn good job. We've responded to everything that has been brought to us in the year and a half that I've been president, and in the 10 years that I've been involved in this, very quickly. So I think our system of governance actually does work. But when decisions are made outside the system of governance, it upsets people. And I think the more that we can have the conversation about all issues in this room with this group of people, the better our system will be. The more that we can discuss and have open conversations on things, the better it will be.
Let me just say, going back to Peter's point, there's no question in my mind that if I had invested the time writing articles that I invested in going from committee to committee selling the grade culture motion, I'd be coming up for full promotion to full professor this year. No doubt in my mind. And again, this is casting no aspersions on the process that's just occurred in this meeting and in the previous one in the Senate. But I went personally to about 6 or 7 different committees and lobbied people personally and lobbied them even when they didn't respond to me. Professor Keir, for example, and spent a huge amount of time invested in this, and there's got to be a better way to do it. There's got to be a better way to do it. I came away with full endorsements of A, B, and C from all those committees. I recused myself from the other one that I chaired for their endorsement. And I do feel we probably didn't have enough time to go into the very valid concerns that people raised. And I respect those concerns about the Motion 11B, for example. I just wish I had heard them 6 months ago, 15 months ago, 18 months ago, when I became involved in this process, and the process predates me by a couple of different undergraduate council chairs. So, I mean, I am very sympathetic to the notion that things move too slowly.
May I?
Please.
I'd like to respond to Richard's remarks about the facilities. When that motion, which was hastily drawn up at your request, was brought to the Senate floor, it was passed. It was an abomination, and the Senate realized it was an abomination and that it couldn't stand. And therefore, committees worked to revise it, and they did so conscientiously, working through the summer. And after 2 revisions, they brought something that was admirable to the Senate. The Senate accepted it. It preserves the qualities of academic freedom, which were rather stomped upon by the motion that was brought first and was passed in a hurry to solve a particular problem. I don't think the Senate was at all lazy in this regard or at all unduly slow. They were thoughtful and they came out correctly.
A bit of context, in the Student Senate, we meet every week, and a 2-hour meeting is considered a short meeting, very short. So I think that part of the reason things take a while is that it's just a 2-hour meeting once a month, and there's only so much you can talk about in 2 hours. So I think a way to get more things done through the University Senate and have more in-depth discussion of issues would be to have more meetings or to have longer meetings. And I know that's not something anyone wants, but that is a way to have things go faster and to really dig into them.
Paul Simons, Anthropology and Deadest of the Dead Presidents. This is a bit of history. When, let's see, it was the 1994, the 95-96, we passed a document called
faculty rewards and development. When it first came to us, it was almost exclusively research. What this Senate did, there was something about teaching, but there was nothing about service. Before we passed it, we had modified it so that it had more about teaching and something about service. Now, this gets to the question that was raised by several people of why you would bother to do this if it doesn't count. And one of the problems is, as far as I can tell, the document has never been implemented, even though it was passed. Service should have some component in decisions about promotion and tenure, because service, as part of this collegial shared governance, is important. It's very important about how the system really works, and the whole tenure, I shouldn't use tenure in this case, the whole aura, shall we say, of being a participant in this university. We saw a necessity for giving rewards for service, and I think really this is one of the things that should be implemented, even though it's somewhat, 15 years since we passed it?
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else? Last time.
Yes, I'd like to address an ongoing problem that appears to diminish the role of the Senate, and unnecessarily so. And this has to do with the policy library. Now, the university was called upon to get its policies together in one place in order to get proper accreditation, and the Provost's office is to be commended for undertaking that job and doing what is by and large a useful task. However, there are some fundamental problems with it. On this campus, the Senate is the governing body, and to govern means to set policy. That's the definition of governance. Now let's look at the policy library and see the degree to which it reflects the nature of the University of Oregon governance. First, University of Oregon rules take precedence over university policy statements. Well, university policy is appropriately set by the Senate, at least in matters that impinge on the academic mission of the university. Oregon rules, another name for Oregon administrative rules, are things drawn up by administrators. And when you say that administrative rules take precedence over policy, you are saying, in effect, that any time the administration wants to snuff the policies, they can write an administrative rule. That has to be changed. Administrative rules are explanations of how policies will be carried out. Therefore, they are subservient to policies. The second problem you'll find on the policy library is that university policy development process is written there, but I can't find the University Senate mentioned anywhere as having any role in the development of university policy. Now that's very discouraging. Anybody thinking they might want to run for Senate and wonder what role the Senate plays in the development of university policy will come up with the answer, zilch. Third fundamental problem, if you can run it for me, is the statement that University of Oregon policy statement published elsewhere are not considered official, as they may not represent the most current revisions or additions. Well, the university passes policies. The University Senate makes policy statements. Each time they pass a legislative motion, it is a policy statement. And according to the Constitution under which we operate, those policy statements become effective in 60 days after they are passed, unless otherwise specified or unless vetoed by the President. We have a number of policies passed, a number of appropriate university academically related policies passed by the Senate, which should be in the policy library because they were passed more than 60 days ago. They were not vetoed by the President. They are therefore effective, and the policy library should draw attention to those, at least with a reference to the listing of those on the Senate website. More perfectly, more nearly perfectly, those policy statements passed by the Senate should be cut and pasted into the policy library at the appropriate place. So until the policy library, which is the major window that people have into university policies and how the university is run, it's the most convenient window. Until the Senate gets its fair due, its appropriate due, then nobody's going to run for the Senate.
Thank you, Frank. I've let this conversation go on a little longer than we had time for because I think it's an important one, and also because the only other thing we had on our agenda was a report from non-tenure track faculty, which is a very important report, and I didn't want to give it short shrift for 5 last minutes. So what I'm going to do is to roll that over to the next meeting so we can have plenty of time to have that important conversation, and I apologize to Ali and the rest of the committee for having to do that. With that, I think we are now to the end of this meeting. So. We still haven't adjourned yet.
Great, thank you. Listening to Nathan and to Frank in particular, I detect a level of, I'm groping for words here, mistrust. That may not be right. A level of impatience, at least, dissatisfaction and unhappiness. That may not be within my power ever to do away with such things because those emotions come from a variety of sources. But I think I would be letting down the institution and my obligations to you and the institution if I didn't simply say that if this is driven by a pervasive sense that it's us versus them, then I'm on your side against some other mythical us. Because this group represents, you are not the university, by the way. I'm not the university. We are all the university. And you represent an important component of the university. And even all of your constituents are not the entire university, because there are 180,000 people out there who think that this is their university because they went here. So we've got a lot of voices that need to be heard. The fact that we have this document up here that says that this is going to be the only place where there's official records is, I think, right. Because we need one place where everybody can go and say, this is right. If we don't have those documents up there in time, that's a procedural matter we need to fix. It is not because of some grand conspiracy to present you, Frank, from getting your voice heard. And I'm very impatient with the simple notion that all the problems that confront us can be laid at the feet of the incompetent management of the president of the Senate or the president of the university. It's very often an accumulation of circumstances. If we can get past this notion that there is some grand conspiracy out there, as far as I'm concerned, there is no grand conspiracy out there. Would that we were so well organized that we could effect a grand conspiracy. If we can get past this notion that there's hostility or tension or friction between, quote unquote, the administration and the Senate, I think we can move with much greater alacrity and effectiveness. From my perspective, your voice is very important. I will respond to you by taking you seriously. And that means that I expect and will demand of you that you be well informed and that you have grounds for your views, and those grounds must be more than, you know what, I don't like that. That's not an argument. That's an impression. And you have a responsibility, as does everyone else in any position of authority here, but you particularly have a responsibility to be informed. And the better informed you are, the more your views are driven by understanding not only the immediate problem, but the context in which those problems arise, the better this institution is going to be. And Nathan was right. This is an unusual governance structure here, because faculty, classified staff, OAs, students all get together in this venue to address issues that confront the university. But that is also a huge responsibility, because it means you've got to know why you feel the way you feel about a particular issue before you give voice to it. And voting no because you don't understand it may be a safe bet, but you probably should understand it, whatever the issue is. And that's all that I would ask of the Senate, is that you vote based on being well informed. And if you're not well informed, ask the questions. Ask the questions of me, ask the questions of Nathan, ask the questions of any of us, because your being informed is crucial for our moving forward. And I frankly think that one of the reasons that public higher education has fallen on the hard times that it has fallen is because people have not been informed. Faculty haven't been informed about the political circumstances universities find themselves in. The public hasn't been informed about what really goes on here. And so we get this sort of finger pointing of ignorance that you're not, those people in Salem are stupid because anybody can see giving me more money for my program would be better for society. I'm slightly overcharacterizing, but not very much, most of our arguments about Salem. And I do happen to think that that's a stupid policy. But I also understand why those people in Salem, many of whom are pretty smart and whose hearts are in the right place, are doing what they're doing. They're simply doing what a public is asking them to do. Now, engaging them is really hard. But I can't do that alone. I need the support, the help, the voices of the people in this room and the people you represent. So anyway, sorry for the gassy response, but I felt that that was necessary. Thanks.
Thank you. I would like, I would, Frank, thank you. I would actually like to end by just saying one quick statement. It may be an overreach to say that our system of governance here at the university is similar to that of the federal government. We have an executive branch, we have a legislative branch. Sometimes those two come in conflict. But I will tell you, and that conflict is not bad, by the way, but what I will tell you is that in my year and a half as Senate President, and having spoken to many thousands of people here on this campus, I can speak on behalf of them and say, we are all very, very glad you are our president. So thank you. And with that, I call this meeting adjourned.